Hi, Leathur Rokk here. I'm doing a different special taping today because today is the 16th anniversary of 9/11 terrorist attacks that I hope we never forget. And I thought that I would veer off of my usual format and get real personal with you and talk to you about my 9/11 story. Now, at the risk of getting me demonetized, at the risk of getting people thinking I'm too old for showbiz, I'm going to be real with y'all. Y'all, I don't talk like that. I was in Hollywood, California when 9/11 happened. At the time, I had two roommates, one of whom had a parrot, a red-naped Amazon, very talkative and very smart birds. And this bird had a habit of squawking and getting people up between 5 and 5:30 every morning. And this particular morning, I had been up late. It's whatever club I'd gone to, so I had just taken a shower and gotten to sleep and got maybe 2 hours of sleep when this bird squawk woke me up. And a few minutes after the bird woke me up, my roommate screamed for me to come in the living room where the TV was, and the first plane had already hit, and the second plane was headed for the second tower. And that was my initiation into 9/11. And the rest of the day, my roommates and I stayed home watching CNN. At the time, Fox News Channel, if it existed, it wasn't on my radar. I was an actor slash dancer slash model in Hollywood. And at the time, I can tell you the effects that 9/11 had on our industry and on me personally. I mean, you got to understand, as terrible as 9/11 was for the people involved, as terrible as it was for what it was to our nation and to our sense of security, and the fact that these sons of bitches got away with this. I'm sure I'm going to do a lot more cursing in this. I'm very angry about this. We have to talk about it. But people who weren't there were affected by this too. I mean, we were all affected in different ways. I'm sure, speak for a whole lot of people working in Los Angeles, California at the time, especially actors, creative people working in movies and television shows. The direct impact 9/11 had on our careers, if what it did to me was any indication. New castings pretty much ground to a standstill. So many industries had a hard time getting work, and a lot of people had to be laid off. It had catering companies that worked for movie sets and things. At the time, I'd been doing a lot of movie extra work and 5 lines or less acting. I was a part-time model. I was a stage dancer when I had time. I did a lot of rock video work, but the rock videos stopped until, the first week of October. I got 2 days on a video for a band called Lit. The song's called Lit, Stick, and Bruises. It was just a cattle call. And the thing is, what really stood out in my mind about that was, once I realized that the camera only went down to our knees, I actually had to switch to sneakers, and I had to get a bandage because my ankle did the Watusi or whatever, and I was actually in pain for those 2 days, but I digress. But 9/11, when it happened, so many productions that were going to be scheduled were interrupted. So much promotion for films and television shows was stopped. I mean, everything had changed. I mean, when I was in Hollywood, I remember when you couldn't find the American flag. I remember those first couple of days, how hard it was to even find a newspaper, because all the boxes, and at the time I lived on the corner of Santa Monica and Vine. Most of my time in California, I lived in walking all these interesting neighborhoods in Hollywood and some other Southern California cities, but ever since my car got stolen, I did a lot of walking in public transportation, and I could tell you how hard it was to find newspapers, even at the International Newsstand, which is on Cahuenga in Hollywood, if you know Los Angeles. I remember how hard it was to find flags and newspapers. I know how hard it was to get back to the East Coast on telephone, because landlines didn't get to the East Coast. In addition to my family in Atlantic City and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, I have friends in New York City, some who lived in Lower Manhattan. It took me until 2 weeks after 9/11 to even be able to get a line out to anybody. I finally borrowed a friend's cell phone, because, in 9/11, not a lot of people had cell phones, I suppose. But 9/11 took, and I'm sure I'm speaking for a lot of people saying this, took my sense of security away. 9/11, I know this sounds like a terrible cliche, it really woke me up. It got me interested in political things and in world events and in world religions, especially that religion that perpetrated this. 9/11 made me so angry. It made me, I never thought that I would be unsafe from things like this, because living in a big country that has two big oceans on either side, and not occurring to me that people could have an ideology that they're willing to die for if it meant killing a bunch of other people, that their very religion is incumbent on your destruction, that our country is hated so much by people who will stop at nothing to do whatever. I guess we should be grateful that 16 years passed and we haven't had major attacks since then. Now, we have had many, many attacks. What is it, 90-something attacks from radical Islamic extremism, whatever the hell you want to call it. And they are attacks, and we are at war. And, I want you to see this shirt. This was given to me by my father. This is from the VFW. I wore this when I went to the 9/11 first year anniversary of the 9/11 Memorial and Ground Zero. See if this is easier for you to read. I have something else to show you. I said I was angry. Well, check this out. When I was getting ready to do this video, I was looking for a bunch of shirts I got from my father. And keep in mind, the shirts I got from my dad are licensed, they're VFW shirts. A lot of them had POW stuff and VFW stuff on the sides. And my father got this, I don't know what, probably state VFW convention or something. Because my dad was one of these my country right or wrong kind of people. And this is one of my favorite shirts of his. It's a shame it's such an extremely large shirt. What do you think of that? Huh? Hope the censors on YouTube and the AI don't get all freaked out about it. I love this shirt. This is just how I feel. I mean, I'm so sick and tired of well-meaning but ill-informed people that don't assert that we should fight this threat with everything we have. I mean, 9/11 should never be forgotten. It has to be a day that and I know we have a lot of things going on now with Hurricane Irma, and my heart goes out to the people that had their houses and everything washed away in the senseless deaths, and especially the people that left their animals. Don't let me get started. This video is not about that. But 9/11, my life was never the same. I mean, 9/11, what it did to me was, first of all, it became harder for me to keep a roof over my head. My folks, I got clean off drugs a couple months after 9/11. Then it was so hard for me to keep a roof over my head because of the stopping of work. My folks said, get on the Greyhound bus, put your stuff in storage, and go home. So I came back to New Jersey, and so 9/11 brought me back to the state of New Jersey, where I didn't have the kind of life that I wanted to have. So when I was here, I discovered Fox News Channel, and I got really interested in politics, and I got to really like the leadership of President George W. Bush. I mean, I was a lefty liberal when 9/11 happened on so many issues, because I was younger and knew less about the world and how the world works. And don't get me wrong, while I'm still a social liberal, 9/11 brought home the fact that we need strong national security more than ever. And having access to channels besides whatever my roommates in Hollywood were watching, because first of all, if I was doing a lot of work in films and television, I didn't have time to watch a lot in TV. And second of which, my roommates tended to watch really annoying television. And if any of my roommates are watching this, I do apologize, but I'm sorry. Saturday morning cartoons and Dora the Explorer really don't rock my socks. But having access to a TV that I could put anything I want from a gazillion channels of cable, and I got really into politics and really into, conservatism. Maybe not necessarily the obnoxious social conservatism stuff like the right to lifers and the anti-pot people and stuff like that, but where it was not something that I disagree with. I was really getting into it, and I got to appreciate George Bush's leadership more and more. And by the time he was ready for his re-election, I changed my political affiliation to GOP. And in fact, I attended George W. Bush's second inauguration in Washington, D.C. And obviously, if I'm going to go through that kind of effort, it meant something to me. And it's cold on my heart. But yeah, 9/11, it didn't change the artistic things about myself. It grew me up some. 9/11 made me kind of bitter, because it interrupted my livelihood. It tore me from a place where I had regular work. I had regular access to a social life. I could go to the kind of clubs I wanted to. I could meet the kind of people that I liked, that I related to. Other showbiz type people that were doing similar industries to me, that at least we could get each other. In New Jersey, where I'm at now, it's just so hard to find similar people, and the close people I'm meeting tend to be online, and that's kind of not helping me. And now the more that I'm making these videos, and plus I'm dealing with kind of taking care of my mother, and she's getting older, and that's another thing. 9/11, my father, he died like 9 years ago. He was alive for 9/11, and I wonder how he'd feel about Donald Trump being president now, because he liked him for different things, but there's other things he didn't dig. But all the things he's been saying lately about building up our defense and things that we're going to finally be doing and not talking about, which is what I've been saying every time I see somebody, some politician on TV talk about, we're going to do this and we're going to do that, and I'm saying, shut the fuck up. We don't need to know, because you and I can watch it on TV, the enemy can watch it too. Don't be stupid. I don't have a lot of patience for stupidity. And especially when you're not dealing with people who are drinking or otherwise adult, there's no reason, there's no excuse for it. But anyway, back to 9/11. I didn't want to let today go by without my talking about it and paying respect to the day it deserves. And I know, and since by the way, because of my keyboard problems that you will be getting a video about soon, it's really hard for me to post things well, and editing is a real problem, and you can tell this is not edited, but I wanted to get it out there, and I hope you take what I'm saying with the sincerity that I infer it, that I imply it, that I'm trying to get to you, that I'm trying to recover personally from what 9/11 did to me. Trying to get work is hard in an area that does not respect creativity that much. But at least here is kind of close to Washington, D.C., so if there's something exciting like Trump inauguration or something, I can go to them. But ultimately, I am going to go back to Hollywood, and I'm going to probably have to keep my politics closeted if I want to get work. But like I said, I can't let 9/11 go by without my acknowledging it. We need to never forget it, and we should do everything we can to be vigilant and stay safe and respect our first responders and our police, unless they're assholes. And we should strengthen our carry laws so that more people who are good and sane and decent have access to guns, so that people can actually defend themselves. Like, wouldn't it be nice to have some kind of carry in New Jersey? We're sitting ducks here. If you're just a civilian, you have no rights at all. You can't protect yourself, and you might as well. Well, I want to make this family friendly. You got my drift. We have serious times going on now, and everything we can do to protect ourselves, we should do. I believe that. Okay, if you excuse what I had to say here, which, hey, I don't apologize for it at all, please, I would love to have you subscribe and hit the bell notification thingy. You'll be notified when I make my next thing. I very rarely get political like this. I know the algorithm on YouTube doesn't like it, and there's a chance they may demonetize it, but I had to say what I had to say, because this was important. Anyway, my name's Leathur Rokk. Talk to you soon. Bye.